So I just want to preface this before, or just say something before I get into all of the articles and all of the essays and stuff, that I'm sorry if I'm kind of like looking off or looking at something. I have two monitors, one right here and one over there, and I just have some things on and some specific quotes that I want to make sure that I say. So sorry if it looks like I'm not giving you attention or I'm not looking into the camera. It's because I'm trying to make sure I say certain things. Anyway, getting into reflection 2, boundaries of blackface. You gave us two links to read. The first one being James Kennard Jr., who are national poets, and the second one being Lauren Jackson's essay, We Need to Talk About Digital Blackface. And even though it says to read James Kennard Jr.'s first, I decided to read Lauren Jackson's essay first because it said it talked about we need to talk about digital blackface, and I feel like since I'm on my phone so much and since I'm always on the internet, maybe I might have seen these things, maybe unconsciously or subconsciously I saw and I didn't really note it because I didn't know what it was. So when I started reading it, I was actually surprised to have noticed how many times I had been personally witnessed digital blackface and how prevalent and relevant it is still to this day. Now, when reading Miss Lauren Jackson's essay, she explains the difference between loving black culture and performing blackface as two very different things. She makes sure to iterate and say how bad performing blackface is and how wrong it is, and she gives us multiple great examples, and she tells us the distinct differences between performing it and giving love to black culture. When she talks about loving black cultures, she says that it's good to appreciate what they do and who they are as a person and what they bring, rather than the emotions stereotyped specifically in digital GIFs or in certain memes. For example, this article says that in GIFs, it includes displays of emotion stereotyped as excessive, so happy, so ghetto, so loud, and television, our dial is on a 10 at all times, saying that they're always kind of animated characters, and it says rarely are black characters afforded subtle traits or feelings. There's also another quote that says scholar Siana Nege, sorry if I say that wrong, used the word as animatedness to describe our cultural propensity. See black people as walking hyperboles, which I started thinking about. I did a little bit of research and I found a lot of movies where that specific characteristics were actually were kind of given, and it's seen a lot of the times in shows kind of like Family Guy and South Park, where they kind of poke fun at it and they trying to create a kind of satirical take at it. But that's how they'll do it, and that's how they kind of get awareness on these type of topics. And also, this article, I'm assuming, is very dated because it references things like Vines and Giphies, which I haven't really heard of. I've heard of Vine and I've heard of Giphies, but that wasn't my era. But it talks about how there'd be certain GIFs on certain apps or certain websites that the only way you would be able to find out what it was is if you looked up, for example, like funny black kid GIF or funny black lady GIF. And it says in this article, there are kinds of GIFs liable to come up with generic search like funny black kid GIF or black lady GIF, and then for the latter search, Giphy offers several additional suggestions such as sassy black lady, angry black lady, and black fat lady to assist users in narrowing down their search, which I didn't even know that happened or that was a thing. Because usually when I look up a GIF, I look up the artist or the specific person's name, and I look up happy or sad just to kind of make sure that the software knows what I'm looking up. But for it to only pop up if you looked at that specific phrase is actually really, really, really offensive and bad, and I just can't believe that something like that was able to go on the internet back, not even back in those days. That was literally 7 years ago. Going back to 7 years ago, there was also this so-called greatest meme of all time in 2016, well, at least according to BuzzFeed, which featured the rapper Conceited in a now iconic GIF where he purses his lips and turns toward the camera with a red Solo cup. And that's how I knew that digital blackface was such a prevalent thing, because even to this day, you can find that meme on Instagram or Twitter so much, and that's even some people's like TikTok profile pictures. Like that's what they like. That's what you know them by, because that's just how relevant of a meme that still is to this day. And I think that was incredible, and that was kind of a real moment for me where I was able to be like, oh shoot, like digital blackface is definitely still around to this day. Moving past Miss Laura Jackson's essay, I have Mr. James Kennard Jr.'s Who Are Our National Poets? And even though I'm not too big of a reader, this this paper or whatever it was, I'm sorry, I don't really know the title. It was so good. I thoroughly enjoyed what he talked about and how his point of view was during these times. Because the way he talks about the difference between loving black culture and performing blackface, he kind of sees them as a lot differently than Lauren Jackson does, but he kind of sees them as like the same. He sees that if you're performing blackface, that means you love black culture. For example, on page 4, paragraph 2 or 3, he says that what greater proof of genius has ever been exhibited than by these our national poets? They themselves were not permitted to appear in the theaters and in the houses of fashionable, but their songs are in the mouth of and ears of all. White men have blacked their face up to represent them and made their fortune by speculation and have been caressed and flattered by on both sides of the Atlantic. Now, when I read that, it kind of got me to understand how he thought and how he interpreted blackface during that time. He saw it as, at least from what I perceived from this one little excerpt, as they are starting to take appreciation to our culture and the things we have done. Like, they're starting to appreciate everything we have done. And I thought that was a super cool moment. And I never thought about it like that. But for him to bring it up like that, for him to be like not appreciative, but to finally see them starting to gravitate towards their culture, I thought that was pretty cool to see. And another moment where we start to see black culture start to slowly mesh in and integrate with white culture was in this quote, where it says, "These operas are full of Negro life. There is hardly anything which might not be learned of Negro character from a complete collection of these original works. A tour through the South and a year or two of plantation life would not fail to reward the diligent collector, and his future fame would be as certain as Homer's." So what they're starting to say is that even though that these operas, well, at least what I perceive what they're saying, is that these operas that were specifically designed for white culture and white life and everything that they have built up, it's not slowly, but it's full of Negro life. They have a bunch of music. They have a bunch of everything. From what I actually read, they had some of the very specific black culture foods started to get sold at certain operas. And I thought that was a really, really cool moment. And the way he talks about it, I can kind of tell by the words he used that he seems very excited about it. That he uses he uses a lot of adjectives to describe how excited he was that their culture is slowly starting to integrate. And with another thing talking about, here's another quote, and he says, "But our national melodists have many imitators. Half of the songs published, as there are, as far as the words are concerned, the producers of mean whites, but base counterfeits as they are, they pass current with most people of our genuine Negro songs." So what he's basically trying to say here is that white people's music is starting to get inspired by black culture's music, and they're starting to create what he calls counterfeits of the music, and he's saying that with honor. And with the specific man they're talking about in this, his name is Sambo. I actually didn't know about him. I'm actually going to do a little bit more research after this in order to kind of figure out who he is and what he did, because so far his story has really, really inspired me. But he's saying that he also says something later on that that's how you can like legitimize how great your culture is. For example, I think he uses the Mexican dollar. He says the Mexican dollar is the most counterfeited coin in America, but yet it's still a socially acceptable currency. Same thing with Mr. Sambo. A lot of people, for example, white people, may be doing blackface and maybe trying to imitate him, but that's how you know that they're kind of authorizing or giving him credit that he is that great. He is that much of a legend, just as much as Mr. William Shakespeare, or just as much as anyone else. That's how he's saying that they are solidifying his greatness by imitating him and doing blackface. So he's saying that, the way I see it, is that James Kennard is saying that if you perform blackface, that means you love black culture and you're taking an appreciation to how great it is and how awesome it is. And I think that in terms of James Kennard's philosophy and Lauren Kennard's philosophy, I think they're completely two different things. I think the difference between the way they think about loving black culture and performing blackface are the exact opposite. James Kennard sees performing blackface and loving black culture as kind of the same thing. That if you're performing blackface, that means you love black culture. the way that you imitate us. You just want to be us. You want to be included in the things that we bring to the table. Whereas Miss Lauren Jackson, she sees performing blackface as you are disrespecting black culture, and that you're trying to give us all these bad stereotypes, and that we're not that, and that we refuse to be labeled as anything you try to give us. We are much more than that. And I think that even though they are two different times, it's crazy that there's two different ideas or spectrums being created. I think that's so interesting and so not cool. Obviously, all this stuff is bad, but I think it's very interesting to see, and I'm actually really happy that I looked over both these essays, because overall I think they were super interesting, and I can't help but be excited to learn more about this type of stuff. Because to be honest, James Kenner Jr.'s I guess essay really just kind of took me for a spin. I did not expect to see that type of opinion be put there, but for that to be put on my mind now, it definitely gets me to think a lot more of how it could be interpreted, especially by other people. Thank you.